All right, back for another beer review, and today I'll be reviewing yet another beer from the Lagunitas Brewing Company, and they are headquartered in Petaluma, California, and this is their Willettized Coffee Stout, and this is the 2023 release. So this is a coffee stout aged in rye oak barrels. It comes in at 12.4% alcohol by volume, 32 IBUs at the time of review. This bottle is just over 5 months old. I'm going to give a huge thanks and shout out once again to a good friend of mine and viewer of the channel, Gregory, for this beer. So big thanks to him. In the description box, I'll post a link to the beer mail unboxing video I did that contains all the goodies he sent my way, and he sent me a small yet very impactful beer mail that contained 4 different beers, and this is the 4th and final from said beer mail that I am reviewing, and I'm super stoked about it. Now, I have reviewed this beer before. I've reviewed the 2019 and the 2022 vintages, and when I reviewed the 2022 last year, I think I reviewed it in early 2023, I said that I should review this one every year because this one changes each year, at least the ABV does. Last year was 13.1, back in 2019 it was 12.4 like this. Other years have been like 12.6, 12.9, depends on the barrels, I'd imagine, much like Bourbon County Stout from Goose Island. So I wasn't going to pick this one up this year because I had so many beers, but Gregory sent it my way and he gave me an excuse to review it. Now, what I would like to say is, I got to be honest with you, and this is not the bottle that Gregory sent my way, and that's because when I did the beer mail unboxing, everything was fine. Everything looked fine. I didn't inspect it, too closely or whatnot. However, I went to go look at the bottle. It was probably about a month ago, give or take a week or two. I forget exactly when. I sent Gregory an email about it, but there was when I was looking for the bottled on date, I saw a big crack in the neck. Now, it didn't look like it was leaking or anything, but better be safe than sorry. I didn't want to drink a beer from a glass bottle that has a crack in it. So I told Gregory, I was like, I'm probably not going to review the beer you sent my way. I'm sorry. He totally understood. He was like, yeah, no, I totally get it. I wouldn't chance it either. I did tell him, however, if I picked up another bottle, I would review it. And guess what? A couple weeks ago, picked up this bottle. So all is good. And looking at the bottled on dates, they're both the same. So probably from the same batch and whatnot. So again, I've had this beer numerous times before. It's always delicious. It's one of the best bang for bucks as far as, big barrel-aged Imperial Coffee Stout goes. And this year, even though I didn't see it, I know this came out in 6-packs this year instead of 4-packs. And I think 6-packs were like 14, 15 bucks wherever they showed up. I know a lot of people were so happy they showed back up in 6-packs. That's awesome to me. Again, for something that's 12.4% aged in rye oak barrels, like that's insane that for a 6-pack, you can get it for like 15 bucks or less. Fucking Lagunitas, man. They still do it. Best bang for buck for many, many years now. Now, I will say that even though it says rye oak barrels, if you go to their website, they do mention that this, like last year's, is it's aged in both bourbon and rye barrels. So it's both, probably blended to some degree. So anyway, that looks absolutely beautiful. This comes right out of my darker beer fridge at 54 degrees. Has some alcohol legs up here, but that has a very dark brown. It's going to look pitch black on camera. Hold it up to light. Yeah, that has that like root beer, cola color. Down here has like a light brown. Had about a finger of a very dark brown mocha colored head. Yeah, you can get about 3/4 of an inch there. Looks very creamy and smooth. Just looks like an awesome barrel-aged beer. And that's what this beer usually is. I usually like this beer to varying degrees, but I will say that I've seen some people say the 2023 wasn't as good as prior vintages. We'll see. Let's get a nose. It smells like there was no English spoken right there. I was just like, I don't know. I don't know what's happening. But that's what happens with Lagunitas when you smell a beer like this. You just start forgetting what's happening. I'm getting recorded right now. I'm on camera doing a beer review. Well, fuck me. It just smells like it's mocha-centric, so tons of coffee, tons of chocolate. But there's such this beautiful caramel, brown sugar, toffee, almost slightly umami character. And then I wouldn't say rye in the nose. It has more of like a nice sweeter bourbon. So it's like sweet, peppery bourbon with some vanilla tones, a little bit of oak. Smells a little boozy to be expected at 12.4%. Maybe a touch of like a black cherry or some kind of nondescript dark fruit. I just get lost in the aroma. I paid, I think it was like $3.50 for that bottle. because I bought a single, and usually, it'll upcharge. But still, before I even drink this, the fact that you can get entire 6-packs of this fucking beer for like $14 to $16, depending on where you buy it, it's fucking absurd. That's absurd. Now the rye's starting to come out. I wouldn't say rye specifically, but like a spiciness in the nose. I can just sit here and smell this. Like, fuck my life. A little bit of like a leathery kind of thing going on. Yeah, I want to get into it. Cheers, everybody. Thanks again, Gregory. Even though this isn't your bottle, I do appreciate the inspiration or the excuse to review this one, because I should review this every year. It changes like Bourbon County. I should review it. And I think going forward, I'm going to not only review this every year, but I'm going to review the Waldo Special Ale every single 420 from Lagunitas, because a lot of people like those beers every year. A lot of people look for reviews of those, and those are both delicious beers. So, again, it gives me an excuse. Anyway, cheers, everyone. Who are these people that say that this beer is not as good as it was in the past, or not as good of a batch? Because off of that first sip, this is fucking delicious. I don't know if you heard that, but my stomach's making all kinds of noises after that sip. Shut up. Body, it's a bit thin. I feel like, again, sometimes I do this if I didn't, because I've reviewed this already twice, but usually I go back, or sorry, I don't usually go back and look at my reviews, and I should have went back and looked at the one from last year. But maybe I said this last year, maybe I didn't. Bit thin. Body's a bit thin. This is like lower side of full. It's 12.4%. I'd like to see it medium to full on body. It's not. It's okay. Detracts a little bit from the beer, but as a whole, it's fine. I mean, it makes it a little bit more drinkable, but when I'm sitting down and taking, it's probably going to take me an hour to drink this. I want something that's a little bit more rich and decadent from a body standpoint, and this isn't. And I feel like last year, maybe even 2019, it was the same thing. The mouthfeel, however, moderately carbonated, but very soft, has a creaminess, not soft, very smooth, has a creaminess to it. So despite the good carbonation, it has almost a luscious mouthfeel. So the mouthfeel and the body kind of offset one another. Thin body, but the mouthfeel makes up for it. The taste, kind of what I said in the nose. What I'm noticing about this year is, yeah, it has that mocha vibe that it does every year. I mean, it is an Imperial Coffee Stout that's aged in rye oak barrels, or rye bourbon barrels. So I always get mocha with this one. The chocolate from the base malts mixing in with that coffee gives me mocha vibes. However, this year, the one thing I'm getting, and maybe this is where people don't like it as much because it is, a coffee stout, I'm getting more of that caramel, brown sugar, kind of caramelized sugar vibe to it, and I really enjoy that. It's very different. So it's definitely different than prior vintages, but in a good way for me. It's not different in a bad way, which maybe that's what people are saying about it. Again, I didn't see a lot of people say this was not as good, but a handful of my friends like on Untapped and beer folk that I talk to, and we're like, yeah, it's not as good as it was in 2022. I think it's almost equivalent in a different way. So yeah, all that mocha goodness, a lot of caramelized sugars, underlying like black cherry, maybe like a plum. And then halfway to 2/3 of the way through the palate, the barrel hits for me. And it has this nice drying kind of oaky quality. Again, that peppery bourbon, not as sweet as the nose was indicating, but it just has like a peppery bourbon kind of vibe to it. It finishes with a full-on dryness and a mild to moderate bitterness. I say smack dab in the middle, so it really does balance out. There is, sweet, decadent characters from the malt at the forefront. The entire palate is accentuated by vanilla, probably coming from the barrel. Underlying leathery kind of, I'm not going to say tobacco, more like a leathery kind of characteristic. 12.4%, big warming in the chest. I can feel it. On the palate, not as much. I mean, I could tell this is a bigger beer, but palate-wise, I wouldn't say it's necessarily 12.4. Probably guess, in the 11 and a half range. So it doesn't hide it like extremely well, but it hides it well enough. Listen, this is every year that I've had this one, it's been fucking really good. And then you take into consideration the value for this beer. Like, this is better than some Bourbon County variants I've had in the past. You take in consideration a Bourbon County base Bourbon County. Every year it gets released here in the Western New York area, typically $12.99 for a single bottle. I know it is 16.9 fluid ounces, so a little bit bigger than this, but it's $13. Some places it's a little bit cheaper, maybe 11, 12. Other places a little bit more expensive, maybe 14, 15. You then compare it to this, and I know Bourbon County is more in the 14, 15 ABV realm, but you take this bottle right here. If you were to buy a 6-pack of it, this bottle is like $2.50. Like just doing the straight compare, and it's brewed with coffee. Do the comparison. And the value on this beer is really good. Is it as good as Bourbon County? On average, depends on what you're looking for. I'd say probably not, but some fucking vintages were way better than Bourbon County. Like the base I'm talking about, not any of the variants and whatnot. So, when people talk about price point availability and I bring value into it, like you have to keep that in mind. Like there is no other brewery that I'm aware of that will sell a fucking 12 fluid ounce bottle of a 12.4% Imperial Coffee Stout aged in both rye and bourbon barrels. It just doesn't happen for fucking $2.50 a bottle. It just doesn't happen. So anyway, let's wrap this one up. It's probably going to be a longer review. I don't give a shit. It's Lagunitas. It's Willettized. It deserves a longer review. Yeah, I think the big thing for me, the big takeaway is this year for me, and it might be the age too, because I've never reviewed this one this old. The first two I reviewed were relatively fresher, like less than like 2 months or less. The key thing about this beer right now as I speak is that it has a big, again, caramelized sugar vibe, a little bit umami, very slight umami, but more caramelized sugar. And I don't remember it being that big. So again, that might be age playing a role, but it's still fucking delicious. And maybe if I had this one 2 or 3 months ago, it wouldn't have that. But regardless, this is fucking dynamite stuff as always. I don't remember what I gave it last year, but Willettized Coffee Stout, the 2023 release, I am going to give this a low 4.5. I'm going to go 4.4. It's where this one lands. I don't know what I gave it last year. I think I gave it in the 4 or 5 range, so very similar, just in different ways. I would say right now, drinking this just over 5 months old, the knock on this one for me, again, I think the mocha vibe isn't as pungent, it isn't as intense as it was in prior vintages. However, that's user error, drinking it as old as I am. And again, 5 months isn't old, but a lot of times you drink coffee, it can fall off and whatnot. I think if I drank this one, say 5 weeks old, you're probably getting a little bit more of that coffee punch, and the caramelized sugar isn't, sitting there punching me in the nostrils and on the taste buds. But it is what it is. And I think this is a really fucking good beer. Price point availability, where I talked about, again, $14 to $16, a 6-pack this year. Again, I'm like 99.9% sure it was released in 6-packs this year. I have not personally seen 6-packs like in my area. I just saw single bottles. But pretty sure it's 6-packs this year. And prior years, I think it was 6-packs at one point, then I went to 4-packs and 6-packs. I think last year was 4-packs. But paying an equivalent price for 6-packs is fucking just absurd. Just like the Waldo Special Ale. The fact that you can, again, get that 11.7% triple IPA for a similar price to this is just fucking bonkers. And availability is Lagunitas. As we speak, by the time you see this review, this beer was released, almost 5.5 months ago. So it might not be hanging out on your shelves. I was lucky to be able to grab a couple bottles, but they release this one every year in December-ish. They usually gets bottled in like mid to late November and then gets released. By the time it makes distribution, it's usually in December, maybe into January. So you probably won't see this one on the shelf right now as you speak, unless you go into like a bottle shop where they just kind of sit on stuff. But if you want to get this every year, you can definitely get your hands on it if you get Lagunitas. Now, I say that knowing that a lot of my friends were like, Willettized didn't show up, or the Waldos didn't show up this year, which is baffling to me because distribution was something you could usually count on from certain breweries, and nowadays it's a crapshoot. So I just know that I saw it in a couple places here this year, but I didn't see necessarily 6-packs of it, so kind of interesting. Anyway, I'm going to shut this one down. If you've had this one before, prior vintage, this year's release, or I guess technically last year's, because it's 2024 now, it's a 2023 bottle. But if you've had one in recent memory, let me know what you thought about it. And the last thing I'll leave you with is, if you've typically have this every year and you had the 2023, how do you think it compares to prior vintages? Like I said, I think the biggest difference I can see for me drinking this bottle right now, more caramelized sugar, a little bit less of like the coffee and chocolate. But I think the barrels are there. or the barrels there specifically. The rye, I don't get like a big rye. You know what? Now I take it back. If you made it to the end, I didn't really talk about like rye at all. Maybe the rye kind of fell off a little bit. I'm not getting a big, I said spicy bourbon, so maybe that's where I'm kind of like not thinking about rye. Let me go back in. Maybe a touch of the rye on the finish, like the rye, little of that spicy bourbon, which probably is rye whiskey. It's definitely dry though. Has like an oak tangerine. So yeah, anyway, I thought this was pretty good. Appreciate everybody stopping by for another beer review. Huge thanks to Gregory for, again, inspiring me to grab another bottle, sending me one. Unfortunately, his went sideways, not to the fault of anybody. It probably got, in transit, probably just got jostled around and maybe cracked. Thankfully, it didn't, crack fully and leak everywhere. But I'm very thankful I was able to pick up a bottle and replace it so I could review it, because I should review this one every year. So thanks to Gregory. Thanks to everybody. Shutting it down to the next one. Cheers.